it was so in the past, it is in the present, and it will be in the future. But, you know, determinism in geography is badly considered because the term determinism that was created in the late 19th century by this German scholar, zoologist and ethnographer Friedrich Ratzel, is a word that has been, I would say, misused in very sad times of our history. And this is something that often happens because scientists work out a theory and politicians do something else of it than what was intended by the person who had developed the theory. So, but determinism, as a matter of fact, is something that can still be considered and is now considered a concept that can be applied to the relationship between humans and the environment if we use a modern approach to this term. Good. So in this talk, I shall speak, as I said, of some case studies that are aimed at demonstrating this, which is my thought, and namely that cultural heritage can be employed as a proxy in paleo-environmental research and also in sea level research. So I think that cultural heritage can be valuable tool to address and paleo-environmental issues. This will be actually the standpoint from which I will explain to you how the idea of SPHeritage came out, because SPHeritage is a little bit difficult and a challenging project because we are working, as you will see, on things that are mostly unpreserved. So I had to be very confident to decide that SPHeritage could be the worth trying as a project. And then finally, I will conclude with some remarks on the relationship between sea level change and different types of human activities. Well, I have had a lot of cultural heritage around me during my career since the very beginning, because I live in an area and I'm based in Pisa, where cultural heritage is wherever. So in this photo, I'm showing you this map, which is actually a medieval copy of a Roman road map. And in this Roman road map, this is a detail of it, showing two study areas of mine, two study sites of mine along the coast between Pisa and Genoa, which are the city of Pisa itself and the city of Luni. Pisa is, and this is the area in a more modern sketch map. Pisa, among the other sites that I have been studying, they are highlighted with the red dots in the past years, was a great experience because we have been reconstructing the evolution of the landscape in the Pisa plain during the late phases of the early Holocene. The aim of this project, MAPPA project, was to create an archaeological predictive modeling for practical purposes, for applications to urban planning. But this project enabled us to get a great amount of subsurface data that that proved very, very useful to reconstruct environmental evolution, and particularly the evolution of what originally was an extensive lagoon close to the foothills and separated from the sea by a sort of sand barrier, which gradually silted up and became a swamp, and then later on an alluvial plain. So this is, for example, the reconstruction of the extension of the lagoon and of the swamp in the early times of settlement of the area. And this project taught me at least a lot of things about relationship between cultural heritage, human population, and environmental changes in a context where the presence of the sea is actually a relevant element of environmental change. Because we learned, for example, that the Etruscan populations preferred to settle in lowlands, in damp areas within the city territory, whereas later the Romans and then in the Middle Ages, preferred settlement was on top of mounds. And this is actually what happened also when they built the Leaning Tower of Pisa, which was built on top of a mound, but they didn't consider the fact that very deep in the subsoil, there was a layer of very old lagoon deposits that got differentially compacted, and then the tower started leaning. Good. So from this project, not myself directly, but others could take evidence, sedimentological evidence, and create index points that were useful in reconstructing relative sea level change in this area. Then later, I started working in Luni, where also there was the purpose was the reconstruction of the paleographic scenario during Roman Age. And also in this case, we drilled a great number of cores, especially around this, which was the Roman city of Luna, a very important city during Roman times. We drilled over 25 cores, and you can see on the right slide one member of the Neptune team in his very early stage, in the very early stages of his career, I think. So also in the framework of this project, we got a number of paleo-environmental evidence and paleo-sea level evidence, but among them I will show you one example, which is this, which is a very nice bioincrustation made of tiny individuals of oysters, very, I would say, very well preserved. Well, it is not very old, as you can see, but it is very well preserved. And this bioincrustation is attached to a queer, to a key, in opus cementitium, which is this type of concrete that the Romans used to build keys. And this small oyster, which is clearly grown inside a marine basin, was used to constrain the relative sea level curve of the area, and it is, as we can see, basically coincident with the Selene ICE 5G GIA curve. And in this other case study, we have a very interesting subject, which is the evolution, the landscape evolution in this small island of central Dalmatia in the Adriatic Sea in Croatia. This small island, in this small island, there is a cave which is called Vela Spila, which preserves a sequence of cave deposits that are very interesting from an archaeological point of view, because they revealed a number of artifacts, tools, figurines, and also bones of that enabled the archaeologists to reconstruct the human occupation of this area since the late glacial maximum, more or less, up to the Neolithic. And there is a nice thing about this this sequence, well, from my point of view, because there is a sort of gap in between. Well, Mend the Gap was also the name of the project, but it was not referred to this gap, actually. But there is a gap in the occupation of this cave, which is more or less around the late part of the Paleolithic. And before this gap, the subsistence of the population that lived in here was based on terrestrial fauna, especially red deer, which is this bone. And later in the Mesolithic, when the cave was settled again, their subsistence was based on fish, on marine resources, even from seafaring. So this means that in the meantime, something had happened that had changed the environment, and this change in the environment had produced a change in the attitude of humans towards the marine environment. So what we did was try to overlap the relative sea level curve, or two relative sea level curves in this case, to obtain a sort of buffer of relative sea level change evidence. And we overlapped to this the phases of settling of the cave. And